Silburn Arthurs presents The Marriage Key, written by Silburn Arthurs, narrated by Roger Johns. Audio production by AB Book Services. Acknowledgements. First, I would like to acknowledge my wife, who has spent the last 20 years with me being patient, loving, and supportive. Secondly, I would like to thank the late Ensford Moskell, who lived as an example and discipled me, and Charles McSweeney, who also mentored me in relationships in my youth. I would like to thank my publisher, Arthurs Publishing, who also allowed this book to become a possibility. I would like to thank my editor, Jalulu Editing, for her excellent editing services. I would like to thank my mother, my father, and my spiritual birth mother, Sharon, as well as my 3 daughters. The Introduction. "Dad is home!" The announcement chimed through the hall. There was a moment of silence, followed by quiet panic. We all knew what we were supposed to do. Keep quiet. Hide. Like soldiers, our training kicked in. If we could slip under the bed and be invisible, only Mommy would be beaten. The front door crashed open. Footsteps thundered, booming like the giant from Jack and the Beanstalk. Except our giant paid the light bills, put a roof over our heads, and food on the table. Our giant could not be slayed. My sister placed a finger to her lips as Boots shuffled into our line of vision. Dad. No one made a peep. Our father was strange. Liquor impaired his vision, so he mistook anything that moved as a punching bag. Those who didn't run away fast enough got beaten up like boxers in a ring with no rules. This happened until we were old enough to escape, which most of us did as soon as we could. But I was never free. Why? They say you marry someone just like your father. I think I have been found guilty of that statement. All I can do now is protect my own children while they hide under the bed. The story above is based on true events and illustrates one of the worst husbands a woman can marry. This and other sad tales of broken homes and broken marriages is why I decided to write this book. It is my deepest hope that all marriages would work and last forever. The Marriage Key serves to equip both husbands and wives with the principles of establishing a strong marriage. Near-perfect marriages are possible and achievable if you follow these principles. Please note, through the course of this book we will be referring to the highest book of principles, the Manual, the Constitution, more commonly known as the Bible, not for a religious purpose, but to extract proven truths outlined by the manufacturer. Also note that this book should be read like a manual. Think of a marriage like an expensive device that you purchased, and it is so precious that you want to follow both the setup and operating instructions, word for word. Lastly, there are times in this book when I will be speaking to the males, and some occasions where I will be speaking to the females. But do not overlook the information if I am not speaking to your gender, because this will equip you on what to expect from the opposite sex. The Warning. This book will only be helpful to you if you have certain heart conditions. A few are listed below. If you need help or you are helping those that need it, this book is for you. If you are teachable, this book is for you. If you are facing separation but you want to repair the relationship, this book is for you. If you have separated from your husband and you're planning to try again with him, this book is for you. If you want to know what kind of husband to look for, this book is for you. If you are doing premarital counseling, this book is for you. The premise. The premise of this book is founded on the statements below. The responsibility for the success or failure of a marriage is on the male. The burden of the marriage is on the male. If anything goes wrong in the marriage, even if it's the wife's fault, it is still the responsibility of the male to fix it. The point. If I could only say one thing in this book, I would say to the males, what makes a long-lasting, successful marriage is to live locked in a loop, the loop of courtship. Think of everything you did during the dating phase to impress and earn your wife. Don't stop. In fact, try to perfect them. Live all your life, all the relationship, the whole marriage, locked in that loop. Chapter 1. The Key of Knowledge. Ingredients of a Healthy Marriage. What is marriage? Many people assume that once they exchange the rings, walk down the aisle, and pledge their lives in front of God and man, any issues between them will suddenly be repaired. Marriage is seen as a miracle drug that will fix everything. But that is not the case. When the honeymoon phase wears off, and it does wear off, the rubber hits the road and most couples are hit by surprise. The truth is, marriage is not a cure-all for bad attitudes. It is not a cure-all for wrong perceptions. It is not a cure-all for individual issues. It is not a replacement for a good foundation. To God, marriage is an inseparable union. To the government, marriage is a legal declaration. To the church, it is a religious union. To most, it is the highest level of commitment one can make. So why do we run to marriage and slap it over our individual flaws, our relationship insecurities, and even a baby bump, praying desperately that it will solve everything? Eventually, the marriage bandage will lose its stickiness, peel and tear, sometimes taking skin and leaving bigger scars. A wedding is a beautiful event, but after the hype and after all the guests leave, the real work begins. Whatever issues you had before the ceremony will pass right through the veil and will stay and rear its ugly head when you're married. Therefore, the focus must turn to other areas that will make a strong marriage, rather than hoping that being married is a solution within itself. What is a healthy marriage? The first ingredient of a healthy marriage is love. Love is at the heart of the equation. It's the base, the foundation, the reason you got on your knee or accepted the ring in the first place. It's why you had the fancy wedding or the courthouse ceremony or the crazy elopement in Vegas. And let's clarify here. The love that we're talking about is not based on emotion. Love is an action that is based on choice, and thus, it is very cheap when coming only from the mouth. What you do says "I love you" more than just spouting the words. When we claim to love someone, there are certain things we will not do. We wouldn't say, "I love you so I will beat you," or "I love you so I will cheat on you," or "I love you so I will leave you because I'm tired of you." So whenever you are thinking that you love someone, ask yourself, what am I really saying? What do I really love? The second ingredient of a healthy marriage is commitment. Commitment speaks of long-term, of enduring. It future-proofs a relationship and makes it last through fires and storms. Love is a choice, but commitment is the expressed evidence of that decision. When a couple vows for better or worse, they've backed themselves into a lifetime contract, and commitment is the glue that gets them to honor this vow. When you function in commitment, there's no running, no backtracking, no way out. You fight through and you fight together. The third and last ingredient of a healthy marriage is selflessness. Selflessness is an attitude and a heart condition. It's an I'm going to put you first mentality. Oftentimes, selflessness leads to compromise, an essential part of a healthy marriage, of healthy relationships in general. With those three ingredients, love, commitment, and selflessness, a healthy marriage can bear fruit. What is the expectation in a marriage? Before any business-savvy person signs a contract, they read the terms. They negotiate. They make sure the exchange is mutually beneficial. Going forward, both parties expect the agreement to be fulfilled. When those expectations aren't met, trust is broken. The contract is no longer a comfort, but a vehicle of frustration. Marriage is a contract, but, even before the ceremony, promises are made between the couple. Some of these promises are real, and others just plain impossible to honor. All these promises have one thing in common. They all come from the correct heart, or at least the appearance of one. And what does the correct heart look like? It is a heart condition where the priority is placed on your spouse. A lady says yes to a proposal, not just because of her love, but because of the groundwork put in before the question is posed. The male goes out of his way to convince her his heart and his intentions are in the right place. When dating, he wins her over by seeking out her expectations and meeting them one by one. The wife carries these expectations into the marriage based on the promises made before, whether directly or indirectly. These promises assure her that she is number one in his list of priorities. Fulfilled expectations are the heart of a healthy marriage. Unmet expectations could be the heart of a failure. The priority of the male to his wife. An individual's priorities are organized like the steps of a ladder. Every man has different priorities, but what level does your wife hold? Or, for a correctly functioning relationship, what level should the wife hold? The answer is, she should be your second priority. There is one priority higher than your wife, and that priority is a relationship with God. If you don't know God, then your wife should be your highest priority. The Constitution says if you seek the manufacturer first, everything else will be added. Matthew 6:33. Likewise, if a man seeks his wife first, his behavior and all his choices will fall in line, and her favorable response will be added. Again, in dating, "You're my number one priority" is the essence that we try to give our partners. During the courting period, the male will show that he has his priorities in order. Along the way, if we're not careful, we lose sight of these expectations. This, among many things we are going to discuss, can cause the downfall of a relationship. Chapter 2: The Key of Training and Mentoring. The lack of training/mentoring for males. In a kingdom, the servants have to call the child of the king, my lord. Why? Because they are grooming that child to become the next king. In a school setting, students are groomed to get and keep a job so they can support a family. Similarly, in a family, a child should be groomed to have their own family. We are always being groomed by someone for something. This is particularly important to note in the case of males. When a male gets older, he expects to have a girlfriend and then a wife. But the question we need to ask is, was he groomed for this? Being a male with functioning parts does not make a man an adequate husband. An untrained and immature male who is not equipped to have a relationship may end up leaving his wife. Many times there are teachings for men on how to be good fathers, but the most important part that is not included is how to be good husbands. Often the father has no problem with the child. In fact, the father usually loves his kids, but would fight with their mother. Because of this animosity between the parents, the father may have become alienated from the family. This results in the male children being reared without a mentor training them on how to be good husbands and fathers. As the sons do not learn the principles of a relationship, they too will then abandon their sons, and a vicious cycle is repeated. Thus, I find this epidemic of husbands not being able to get along with their wives as the number one culprit in the issue of absentee fathers. Why nurturing alone isn't enough. By design, the family unit is structured to have both a father, husband, and a nurturer, mother. The nurturer provides caring, comforting, and a soft place to rest. However, these things are not productive in grooming a child into a husband. In fact, constant coddling may end up crippling the mind. A child can survive on nurturing alone until around the age of 12. But when a young man reaches 13, 14, or 15, he needs a male mentor in his life. Of course, the father should be involved in the child's life during the nurturing stage, but having a father to train a son during the adolescent stage is especially crucial. During this stage of his life, a young man is training, learning how things work, and slowly discovering the man he will become. The lessons he must learn cannot be imparted under pampering. In the case of the mentor's absence, the male child is now left with a female trying to teach him how to be a man. A female has no idea what males go through. They know what females need, but they don't know what males need. To make things worse, some females might see the father in the child and take out their frustration, exhaustion, and pain on him. Now the child grows up thinking that all women are argumentative, picky, and abusive. This warped mentality shapes how he views women as he grows up and creates a bitterness in his heart towards females. These problems stem back to one thing: the lack of mentorship. Because of the lack of training, a multitude of problems can spring on top of each other. For example, look to men in gangs and in prison. Listen keenly how they talk on the street. Many times these males will boast about how much they love their moms, but then they make decisions where they cause their mothers much pain and suffering. Why does this happen? Because at that critical age of 13 or 15, though these young men had and loved their mom, what they needed was a male mentor. Example 1. I remember one mother storming my class after school. She was screaming at the top of her lungs, threatening to punish her teenaged son for his bad behavior and disinterest in his studies. She insisted he would do his homework now that she was involved. All the students shook in fear as she raged. But the moment the mother walked out of the yard, the son calmly said, "I will not listen to her." The son did not change his behavior after that day. In fact, he was later expelled from the school. The student's mother had good intentions, but she did not have what he needed, and thus she could not reach him. This anecdote is one of many that I've experienced in my lifetime of teaching, and is one of many issues that arises when fathers are not present. The absentee father epidemic. An absentee father refers to the father not being home. He can be absent physically because he lives somewhere else, or he can be absent mentally and emotionally. Many fathers are there physically, but come home drunk or are constantly fighting with their wives. They might be there physically, but are raping or sodomizing the kids. They might be there physically, but are abusive, opportunistic, or irresponsible. That is not a father being home. That is an imposter, an opportunist, or a pedophile being home. I call the absentee father crisis an epidemic, not only because it is widespread, but because it is responsible for so many of the problems we face as a society. When a father isn't present, it creates a big hole that the males plummet through. These sons marry or impregnate women but are not qualified to handle relationships, and thus the cycle gets worse. Whenever the father is not present in a family, the son is left to try and figure himself out on his own. There are many faulty options vying for his attention, ready to steer him in the wrong direction. Fake messages declaring that a man does this, or this is the way a man behaves, abound. It is critical to understand that a father brings so much to the table. When there is a team working together, both nurturer and father, then everything functions. But without the father, it is like an entity trying to function without a vital part. Possible, but hard. The impact of the absentee father. Not having a father breeds multiple issues in the heart, and everybody reacts differently to this experience. For example, a woman who grew up without a father does not have an example of how a man should treat her. She doesn't know how it feels for a man to hug her and tell her that he loves her. So the first person who swaggers by and hugs her, even if he's a wretch, will flutter her heart. On the same note, a male without a father may find himself getting involved in things that are not productive or healthy towards society. For example, he may lash out against authority, join a gang, or even end up in prison, all to find the identity his father was supposed to give. Absentee fathers create an army of bitter people who move around in the world. Bitterness has other cousins such as anger and violence. These symptoms multiply quickly and make more of themselves, contributing to the absentee father epidemic. Indirect mentoring. A father does not have to be related by blood. He is simply a strong male influence that helps the child to grow properly. To qualify, this male influence must, himself, understand what is needed from a male in a relationship. And he must start training that son from a young age so that the right behavior becomes a habit and a culture. When the male's responsibility in a relationship becomes a natural way of thinking, the mentor's job is successful. The prince is not a king when he is crowned. He has been practicing to become king from the moment he was born. It is the same in a relationship. During his formative years, a child is like a tender plant. After he grows past a certain age without a father, he's already been harmed by the lack of training. The damage can be repaired, but it's challenging to do so. To be clear, it is not impossible for a woman to raise a male. The absentee father epidemic is not putting anything on women. Women are naturally good at what they do and perform their nurturing jobs to the fullest. But it is unfair to increase the weight on them and expect them to take on roles that add to their already heavy burdens. Although not the best-case scenario, in the absence of a father, indirect mentors become priceless. Before a child's mentality has been set and he's up to his own devices, he can be reached by an indirect mentor, an uncle, a brother, a teacher, a pastor, or even a coach. An older male might see the potential in a child, take them up, and challenge them in the areas where a father should. Indirect mentoring can step up to the plate, and these mentors are powerful enough to make a difference. Just be careful of who you allow to mentor your child, because not everyone is trustworthy. These indirect mentors operate from a position of authority. When they become involved in a child's life, they are expected to help strengthen the child's identity, just as a father would by protecting them, shaping the way they think, and thus setting the child up for success in both relationships and in life. Why an adult male may still need a mentor. It is in a man's nature to dominate and be the authority. So, when a man reaches 16 or 18 years old, he loses interest in looking for advice. At this point, it is easier to bend a tree than to change him. But a crisis is an expert at bringing change, and, when hit with a crisis, a male becomes open to seeking counsel and mentorship. Whenever the male is open, regardless of whether it's initiated by a crisis or not, one of the biggest ways to implement change would be through materials like this book, where he is given the tools and principles to equip him with the necessary skills. In addition, finding a mentor to attach himself to is another useful move. Good mentorship is very hard to find, but a solid place to start is by attaching to pastors and counselors that are more readily prepared to equip a male with instructions from the manual. In both research and seeking mentorship, a male has shown that he has come to himself. This is an important part of the process of making real change. When the male comes to himself, he becomes humble. His priority is on fixing the issue rather than nursing his pride. The moment the male realizes that he's messed up, that is the moment he has come to himself. And that is a good start. How mentorship relates to marriage. You might be wondering how this topic relates to marriage. After all, if you're reading this book, you are probably already in a marriage, preparing for marriage, or thinking about dating. It is important to understand the lack of fatherhood/mentorship epidemic, because we need to know where a male's mentality comes from in order to fix it. We're exposing that something we haven't been able to put a finger on, but that we know is missing. Remember, we are always being groomed for something, just as a seed is groomed to become a tree, or a prince is groomed to become a king. If a child with royal blood is groomed to become a pauper, guess what he'll be when he grows up? Likewise, without a father present in the home, the sons have no examples in front of them of how a man should treat his wife. They have no rules set before them, no demands of how they should function and grow from the perspective of a male. If these sons don't get groomed properly, they grow into out-of-shape husbands and, eventually, out-of-shape fathers. Is husband grooming possible? The answer is yes. Look at the females. They do this almost naturally. They tell the younger women, "No man will want you if you can't cook," or no man will marry you if you don't brush your teeth. They instruct a young woman on how to be ladylike so she can prepare for marriage. These women are not asking the young ladies whether they want a relationship later. They are just teaching them, grooming them from a young age. For a female, you don't get into a marriage when you are married. You are getting into a marriage from the moment the female mentor is instructing you on how you are supposed to think and behave. Likewise, male mentors preparing and training potential husbands is one of the greatest needs of a home. The training this mentor provides brings order and demands, no, it guarantees success. What makes a man? It is widely believed that a man is a man because he is handsome, tall, muscular, or because his genitals work. But this is not the case. These definitions are harmful because they give the impression that everything is okay with a male when he's pleasant to look at, muscled up, or good in bed. Many women fall into this trap and get males who meet their criteria on the outside, only to realize that he has no training in relationships. Lack of mentorship is detrimental to the future of a family, and the family is the atom of society. Like an atom, if it is split apart, it will cause an explosion. As a major part of the foundational cell of the family, the male needs to be mentored and shaped. Otherwise, he will end up malfunctioning like a cancer. This will damage and destroy the organism and cause a lot of pain. We see this reality play out every day. Many marriages are cancerous. These relationship deaths are mainly due to the lack of mentorship in the male. To the males, don't be discouraged if you are one of the many who did not have a mentor. Knowing the why is an important step in winning the battle, and we're going to discuss the 3 functions of the male in the family so things can start turning around. Chapter 3. The Key of PPI. Protect, provide, and give identity. PPI, short for protect, provide, and give identity, are the 3 most important functions of a male. These functions are interconnected and bleed into one another to create a strong anchor that can hold a family steady in life's most turbulent storms. Protecting the body. The first, most obvious form of protection is physical protection. It is a prominent and widely accepted male role, especially when discussing the family. Physical protection is important. For this reason, God made the man with a much stronger physique. If danger approaches, a man cannot run behind his wife. It is his responsibility to provide physical covering from harm and danger. As a child, I remember taking a walk with my family and being attacked by a German shepherd. When the dog lunged, my father had no weapons except for a pair of heavy combat boots strapped to his feet. As the animal attacked, my father fearlessly pushed us out of the way and took the dog on. He endangered his own life to spare ours. His act of selflessness burrowed into my mind and provided a clear example for me to follow. When it was time for me to protect my family from a bat that dropped into our living room from the roof, I pushed my own fear aside and took care of the problem. Despite the fact that I am just as terrified of bats as my wife, I knew I was supposed to protect my family and did so. Protecting the spirit and mind. Physical harm isn't the only danger that exists in our world. A person is made up of more than just flesh, so when a male focuses only on protecting the body, he is missing 2 giant parts of the human makeup: the spirit and the mind. Imagine if these insults were hurled at someone. You are good for nothing. You are stupid. You mean nothing. Though it is not piercing the skin, The curses slam against the soul. Whenever these negative insults are coming at a wife, a husband should be there with his figurative boots, ready to defend her. More importantly, the husband should never be the one hurling these insults at his wife. He should be building her up with words like, "You mean something to me. You are intelligent. You are special. You are valuable. You have a purpose." A male should protect his wife's mind and thoughts. This simple act will speak of how valuable she is to him. Providing for the wife. In this current age, women value education. A wife might be as educated or more educated than her husband. This professional and educational independence is something that I recommend wholeheartedly. A woman should be able to stand on her own so she isn't forced to stay with a husband who mistreats her. However, just because a woman can work doesn't mean she has to. A wife can help to take the family out of a financial problem or to maintain a financial level, but she shouldn't have to remain in her job. She should work if she feels like it, if that is what she wants to do. It is the male's job to provide for her. Whatever finances or material resources she needs, the male, as the father/husband, should take up responsibility. In the manual, it says very clearly, "Therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother." Genesis 2:24. It never said a woman shall leave. If the male does not have the skill, the education, and the ability to take care of a family, he should not leave his mother and father to go and take on a lady. Look around, and there will be many examples of a male who wasn't ready to take on the responsibility of a wife, but did so anyway. Sadly, many times, a woman discovers this shortcoming in the male after they have started a committed relationship. Leaving an inheritance. The manual mentions a religious man who died and left his family in debt. The family owed so much that one of the creditors wanted to take the religious man's sons as payment. This was a spiritual guy, yet he still left out an important principle of being a father: provision. Thus, being spiritual does not automatically make a person a father. In the religious man's day, financial provision was a piece of land or animals. Today, an inheritance can be translated into insurance or savings. There are life insurance policies that cover the house or funeral costs. There are credit unions and banks that also offer these services. The religious man left his family with nothing, and his wife had to depend on miracles to get them through another day. Because he was not responsible enough to put mechanisms in place to ensure that they were provided for, even after he passed, they almost lost everything. The provision is not a responsibility that ends with death. A man should provide so that, even when he dies, he has something in place to take care of his family. If it is impossible to leave the family with a financial inheritance, then he should at least not leave them in debt. Provision can be manifested through other means, such as working hard to get the children an education so that they can fend for themselves. It can also be telling them about life after death so that, if they die, their father encouraged them in having eternal life. The father in the marriage. Being a father to someone is not necessarily being a biological father. Even as adults, we meet people whom we consider our father. I remember a man and his wife quarreling right in front of me, both of them claiming me as their father. They were joking, but the underlying thread was that I'd been a father to them both. Why? Because a couple of the things that a father provides, I gave to them. Though I am not a biological father to this couple, they considered me as one in spirit, and it is the same with a man and his wife. I mentioned being a father many times in the previous segments. Some of you might be wondering, I thought this was a book on repairing and strengthening marriages. My answer to that would be that a marriage is a family. It is a male's responsibility to be a father first to his wife and then to his children. If you remember nothing else from this book, here are 2 principles I want you to take away. The foundation of a strong family is the male. The foundation of a strong marriage is the male. When I speak of being a father to a wife, this does not mean the male should order his wife around and tell her what to do as if she were his child. Similar to an adult son who is married and has his own family, his father should not or would not be exercising authority over him. Remember, a father is not a human being. It is not a biological sperm donor. A father is a position, a role, and a responsibility that a human takes up. A male's function in the marriage and in the family is to wear multiple hats as a protector, a provider, and a giver of identity, and therefore he is always a father, even to his wife. The last name principle. A father gives identity, and this is why he gives his last name to those he fathers. In a family, the first person this happens with is the wife. The last name principle often encourages a language that represents the husband's growth in his fatherhood responsibilities. This growth is why a woman might naturally call her husband Daddy. As a child, I heard my mom call my father Daddy when speaking to him about matters involving the household. There were times when my dad called my mom Mommy, too. They did not use these terms because they considered themselves children. These labels were used because the person walked so fully in their role as a parent that it was natural for their spouse to describe them by their title and function. I call you Father because that is what I see. This is the heart of identity, functioning so deeply in our role as father that it becomes our name. Interconnected PPI. The husband will also give the wife identity through verbal validation, saying, "You are beautiful," or "Your food is nice," even if he's choking, emphasizes her value in his eyes, and reinforces her purpose in the home. Giving encouragement and acknowledgement by saying, "I like the way you tried to make me happy," or "I love the way you take care of this house," further cements her identity as a mother and a wife. Here are some more assurances. You are the best thing that I ever laid eyes on. You complete me. Sounds similar to the phrases we discussed in the Protect the Mind segment, right? That's because protecting the mind and spirit is closely intertwined with giving identity. It is a husband's job to reinforce that his wife has a purpose and a reason for existing. Another word that can be exchanged with identity is value. How much you value yourself will determine what kind of identity you have. If something is not valuable to you, then anyone can do what they want to it. If something is of value, you treasure it and take care of it, with effort and tenacity. If you give positive validation, you create a culture and a solid foundation of identity. If you take it the other way and give only negativity, you end up with a broken human. To the ladies who are reading this book, be warned. It is easy to judge a man's readiness for a relationship based on his looks. Simply because that male has a nice car, has swag, or has a fancy wardrobe, this does not mean he is equipped with the training and skills necessary for marriage. During the dating stage, instead of gauging his physical appearance, test a man's preparation for marriage by his ability to provide, protect, and give identity. Chapter 4. The Key to Understanding the Curse. The Manual for Humans. Most household and electronic appliances come with a manual outlining the basic instructions, warnings, and promises within. Humans have a manual too, called the Bible. For the manufacturer who produced it, the Bible is a constitution and a law that he placed above his own name. The manufacturer wrote these instructions with directions, warnings, and promises so we would know how to function. Included in the manual is the proper parameters and guidelines so that the product can last as long as possible. Not everyone subscribes to the directions of this manual, but, by design, a product can get the best use by following the guide that was created by the one who made them. Likewise, we can find great success if we line up with the Constitution's keys. In this chapter, we will take a closer look at the manual and examine the different responsibilities that have been placed on both the male and the female based on the curses outlined within. The man's curse became the female's curse. When the manufacturer cursed the man, he said, "By the sweat of your brow you will eat." Genesis 3:19. This responsibility was placed on the male alone, not the female. However, in this day and age, we have both men and women working very hard to put food on the table and to take care of a family. Sometimes the lady works harder than the man, slogging at a job that is mentally stressful, even if it isn't physically taxing. This leads to problems later on because the woman has taken on a curse that she was not designed for. She now has to deal with all the issues, stipulations, and problems that come with working by the sweat of her brow, as well as the 3 curses she bears alone. The female's 3 burdens. The first curse, outlined in the beginning of the manual, is one that most women who've been pregnant can attest to, but the other 2 are less known, often piled together and overlooked. Let's dive in. After the punishment of pain in childbirth, the curse continued. Your desire will be for your husband. Genesis 3:16. Meaning no matter if her husband mistreats her or is unfaithful to her, her desire will be to please him. Before discovering this curse, I had a hard time understanding why women would make the decisions that I saw them making over and over again. I would sit and watch the news, listening to reports of men beating women, leaving their bodies broken, and even kicking their unborn child to death, only for them to get back together weeks later. I remember meeting one particular woman. She came crying to me, devastated because her partner had cheated on her and then left her. I listened to her rant almost on a daily basis for months about all the horrible things he had done. A year later, the man came back, looking for a second chance. I advised her to start from scratch and to date him as if she didn't know him. No sex, no moving in, no trust until he earned it back, even if it took a whole year or longer. Despite my warning, the woman welcomed the cheater with open arms. The day after, she came to me with a shy, sheepish smile and mumbled, "I'm stupid, aren't I?" That was the moment I started to think it. Maybe they all are. Then I read about the female's curse in the manual and my mind shifted. I realized, oh, this is why women behave this way. But it doesn't end there. The third curse even goes a step further and states, "He, your husband, will rule over you." Unfortunately, it doesn't say good men only or only those who treat you right will rule over you. This principle has no loopholes, and that is the frightening power of the curse in the manual. A man understanding this principle is taking one of the biggest steps toward creating a fireproof marriage. When is the female's curse activated? The curse comes into effect automatically when a blood covenant is created. The minute a woman says, "I do," leaves her parents' house and joins with her husband, she takes on her burden. This also applies to couples who live together or are in common law relationships. Therefore, if a woman is single, doesn't have a husband, and doesn't have somebody that she is living with or sleeping with, these curses do not apply to her. However, the minute a sexual relationship forms, a blood covenant is created, and a woman will eventually run into one of the curses. The minute she moves in, she receives full extension of the curse. Why is the additional curse of work a problem? Scenario 1. In many households, the female goes out to work and puts in long hours. When she gets home, she is expected to fulfill the traditional roles of a woman. Despite being tired, she is expected to cook. Despite being burnt out, she is expected to clean. Despite being frustrated, she must look after the kids. On the other hand, the man goes out and works. After a long, stressful day of work and 2 relaxing hours with his friends at the basketball court or the billiards table at the bar, the man returns home. He puts his foot up in the chair and expects that his dinner will get made. He expects the wife to help the children with their homework, to put them to bed and to discipline them. Now, as the nights grow old, he expects his exhausted wife to meet his sexual needs. Keep in mind that the husband hasn't even asked about her day. The manufacturer gave the woman 3 curses, but gave the man a curse so severe that he only needed 1. By taking on the male's curse, the woman is stretched to capacity, juggling a burden she wasn't intended to bear, along with the traditional expectations on her shoulders. Now the wife is more tired than she should be. She lacks patience and turns miserable. As a spin-off effect, she becomes stressed and starts to complain. These complaints spark bitter arguments that only add to her exhaustion and unhappiness. Soon she starts looking stressed. Then she starts dressing stressed. At night she avoids intimacy with her husband. The added strain on the relationship begins to weigh it down. From the husband's perspective, his wife has gone nuts. She's always complaining and hollering after the kids. She has become another person, with gray hair and extra pounds from having birthed his children. Because men are visually stimulated, he will look at her and not be turned on by what he is seeing. Because of the constant fights, he calls her argumentative and stays out of the house. Out there, he sees a younger woman, whom he is not yet stressed out with taking on his curse. She is fresh, understanding. She's looking for a partner and has no husband, no kids, and very little expenses, so she can spend all her salary on herself, doing her hair and dressing the part. Slowly, the husband's attention wavers. He is no longer holding on to the promise he made during dating, when he told his wife that she would be his world, and he would take care of her. All his courting skills are focused on the mistress, who is now getting what the wife was getting in the dating stage. Soon, the marriage falls apart. The deterioration of the relationship is sped up by the woman taking on the extra curse when she shouldn't have to. In this modern family where the roles have been diluted and, sometimes even reversed, we have set ourselves up for high stress, resulting in possible failure. Armed with the truth, a personal message to women. I've described a scenario that occurs in many marriages to warn you. It is very important to make sure the rascal you're marrying is the best rascal you can get. For those who have the opportunity to get a separation from a cheating husband, do so. Don't be a victim of your own curse. The minute he left with another woman, he made a new blood covenant with someone else, and you are free from your covenant. If ever you have the privilege and the opportunity to see him come back, make him work for it. If he loves you so badly and he realizes the mistake he made, then he shouldn't have a problem with earning back your trust. Date him as if it's the first time you are meeting, even if it takes 2 years. During those 2 years, observe him intently and check to make sure that while he's with you, he's not satisfying himself physically with somebody else. If he has to seek pleasure elsewhere, then stay away, because the minute you let him back into the house, the curse takes place. At that point, you are not under your authority. You are giving your authority over to him. Chapter 5. The Key of Friendship versus Authority. Friendship versus authority. In life, there are 2 main types of relationships: the friendship relationship and the authority relationship. A friendship is where 2 parties mutually agree. They have something in common and enjoy being around each other. This relationship type spans from casual friends to romantic partners. In a friendship, nobody has authority over anyone else. It's a mutual agreement, equal authority. One of the first conditions a husband and wife, or any couple in a relationship, have to meet is to be friends. Romantic bonds are difficult to maneuver if the affection and interest is not mutual. Without this relationship type, the connection will crumble. However, in an authority relationship, there are different requirements. Requirement 1. Whoever is in authority is in charge. Requirement 2. The person under authority is to serve and respect them. Respect is the biggest key. It is so important that the manual lists it as an explicit directive. Wives, respect your husbands. 1 Peter 3:1. Not only wives, but children also fall under this authority rule. Sons and daughters are instructed to honor their parents. Exodus 20:12. Other examples of authority relationships are police officers and citizens, judges and plaintiffs, or judges and lawyers, teachers and students. Those under authority are required to listen to those in charge. Why? Because the person in the higher position is responsible for those under him. In a husband and wife relationship, the authority's job is to love the woman under his care. This, too, is an explicit directive. Immediately after instructing wives to respect their husbands, the manual turned to the one in authority next and stated, "Husbands, love your wives." Ephesians 5:24-25. The 2 parts make a whole and feed into each other to become a dependent principle. If a husband loves his wife, she will respect him, and if a wife respects her husband, he will love her. The difference between rule over and please. To rule over someone means you have a say over that person and can exercise some level of control. On the contrary, when you want to please someone, that comes from the heart. The female's burden is twofold, as it shows the depths and the severity of the curse on a woman. She will want to make her husband happy, and her desire will be to please him. But on top of that, he, as the man, will rule over her. That curse is what causes so much responsibility to fall on the male, because if a wife is cursed to follow you, then you cannot complain if she is not where she should be. The woman is only following the man she was cursed to please. Is a marriage friendship or authority? In a marriage, both relationship types are present. A couple should be friends, but, at the end of the day, it is an authority relationship. This is similar to a human's relationship with God. The manufacturer wants to be our friend, but make no mistake about it, he is still the authority, and it is still an authority relationship. In a husband and wife relationship specifically, the husband is the head of the home, Ephesians 5:23. Therefore, the male is responsible for what happens, all the time. No exceptions. His job is to take responsibility, not to place blame. The origin of the blame game. The blame game started all the way in the beginning. According to the manual, the male, Adam, ate the fruit and sparked a rebellion against God. Yes, the woman ate the fruit and presented it to him, but, in that moment, before he took one bite, Adam had many choices. Option A, move away from Eve. Option B, drop kick the fruit. Option C, remove Eve from the earth, permanently. Another Eve would have been formed quickly, as there were plenty of ribs where she came from. Adam's biggest mistake was going with option D, eating the apple. In doing so, he doomed the entire human race, trapped in his body. The moment she ate the fruit, Eve died. Genesis 2:17. She was walking around with a lethal mental virus and was now capable of spreading it to the entire human race, which was hidden in Adam. Romans 5:12. When a male ejaculates, millions of sperms, potential human beings, leave his member. Thousands, maybe even millions of potential human beings are lost every time he releases his seed. Because of one man's sin, the generations locked inside him were found guilty. I want to stress the different options Adam had when Eve offered the fruit. Options he had, but didn't take. He was not a helpless victim, seduced by his beautiful wife. He was an authority figure who made the wrong choice. Had Adam tossed Eve out of the garden, or put her under quarantine until the boss came around to repair the situation, he would have been protecting the world from the spiritual zombie apocalypse it has become. That's why, when God came down and wanted to test the humans, he came to the one whom he had given authority over the wife. He came to the man. And God asked the man, "What is happening?" Adam told him, "I'm naked." "How do you know you are naked?" God asked. The man replied, "It's not me, God. It's not my fault. It's the woman that made me eat it." Genesis 3:12. What did Adam do as the first father on the earth? He broke the rules, and then he blamed his wife. With great power comes great responsibility. The male has been given the ability to rule over his wife. However, this does not give him free rein to abuse or mistreat her. This power comes attached with heavy expectations. You, as an authority, cannot cast the blame on anybody else. You, as an authority, are responsible for everything that happens. The male might not be the cause of everything that goes wrong, but the responsibility rests on his shoulders to fix it. If a man takes his car out for a drive and a cop stops him and points to his broken tail light, he cannot tell the police, "This is a bad car," and "The tail lights always go out." He cannot give an excuse about the car because, ultimately, he is the person driving that car. He decides. He is the authority. He chooses whether that car moves or not. Just as he decided to get in the vehicle and drive, he could have made the choice to check it. The car would not have stopped him. If he'd looked over the vehicle and noticed it wasn't roadworthy, he could have decided not to take the car on a trip. How foolish would he, as the one in the driver's seat, look, blaming the car? Now, imagine the truck was not insured. As a person who has the authority, can he throw the car under the bus? Can he claim his vehicle told him it does not want to be insured? No, and the police won't buy that excuse either. As the authority, the male is responsible, and, when it comes to a marriage, to a relationship in general, it is no different. The male is the authority, and the male is responsible. You may ask, how is this possible? To understand this, keep the curse in mind. The wife's desire is to please you, and you are to rule over her. Therefore, you have the power to make sure that the relationship is successful. The wife is the mirror of the husband. The male's responsibility encompasses the protection, provision, and the giving of identity to his wife. A great way to check if these conditions are being met is by checking in his mirror, his wife. A wife is an incubator. She will take the raw material her husband provides, multiply it, rearrange it, and give him something usable. In fact, she'll give him a little more than he gave her. For example, give a woman flour, and you get bread. Give her a house, she'll make it a home. Give her a sperm, and she will give you a little human being in return. Whatever the male gives to her, she will accept it, increase it, and give him back. So, whenever a husband wants to grow or repair his marriage, he must use this tool to evaluate himself. An evaluation is an important part of success. Whether it's in sports, music, or in academic classes, there is always an assessment or a test. It is doubly important for a husband to make this assessment. Without it, he runs the risk of not realizing where his weaknesses are, and thus, he will be unable to grow. A good evaluation of how well a husband is doing in a marriage is looking at the wife. How is the wife doing? Is she happy? That means that the husband is taking protection, provision, and giving identity, feeding them into her, and she is multiplying it and giving him back happiness. Is the wife nagging and constantly complaining? Then he would need to ask himself, what am I giving her? A mirror is a quality assurance tool. The very reason anyone will look into their reflection is for evaluation. If a person looks into a mirror and sees that he has some spots on his face that don't belong there, he will remove them. The wife is the mirror test. Whatever you, as the authority and the male, are getting back is a spitting image of what you're giving, with a little extra added. The wife cannot help it. That is how she was assigned. What is the extra that you are getting? Happiness or stress? Depending on the answer, reflect on what you are giving her. Chapter 6. The Key of Knowing What Destroys a Marriage. The most crucial ingredient in a marriage. Commitment is like a main artery that feeds all the muscles in the body of a marriage. If we compare the makeup of a strong, healthy marriage to a table, other components would make up the legs, but commitment would be the tabletop. Commitment is so powerful that it says a lot without speaking a word. Commitment reveals what your priority is, that you're a person of your word, that you can be trusted. Commitment removes questions and doubts about faithfulness and encourages self-control. When we make the monumental decision to commit to one person for the rest of our lives, we gather our families, friends, and loved ones and describe it as a marriage. Commitment comes into play even before the wedding. When a couple is deep in the courting stage, the man will do everything he can to impress the woman he wants. How does he do that? He gives her the impression, whether true or false, that he is ready to walk in commitment. When commitment fails or becomes diluted, it's because we find ourselves in a weakened state due to a temporary temptation or problem. Losing commitment is immensely damaging to a relationship. In this state, selfishness becomes our priority. Thus, destroyed commitment leads to destroyed marriages, and, ultimately, lack of commitment leads to failure. Why lack of commitment is so dangerous. A husband who is not committed is a husband with other priorities. Distracted and restless, he will point all his time, focus, and affection on the shiny new thing dragging him away from his commitment. Men and women are vastly different. It is said, for a man, his biggest need is physical intimacy. For a woman, I've learnt, her biggest need is affection. When the male takes his affection and places it on other things or people, because of his lack of commitment, he stabs open a hole that leaves the marriage exposed, vulnerable, and primed to deteriorate. One of the worst symptoms of lack of commitment, and somewhere the husband can cause the most damage, is when he goes after another woman. Cheating is so destructive because it breaks all the promises made in the marriage vows. Just as a man walking in commitment speaks without opening his mouth, a lack of commitment says something as well. A man who breaks his commitment to his wife is silently telling her that she is not the best, that she is not good enough, and that there is someone out there better than her. Someone more beautiful, someone with a better body, someone more understanding and less quarrelsome. Here, he is breaking his responsibility as a father. He's degrading her identity and value rather than building her up. Losing commitment to the wife and going after another woman is the highest loss. But there are other smaller areas where a man can lose commitment. For example, if he is always out playing music, playing basketball, and attending to his needs and hobbies, while his wife remains at home to do everything else, that is a sign of a lack of commitment. The husband is fulfilling his needs, but not meeting those of his wife. Again, a man's need is physical intimacy. A woman's need is affection. Affection means trying your best to make sure your wife is happy. A marriage should be something that the wife feels happy in, and the husband's job is to get that done, regardless of how he ended up with his wife. In the case of arranged marriages, the husband still has the responsibility of making the wife happy, even though at first glance he might not have been physically attracted to her. This proves where his commitment is. If you are committed to something, you will put your drive and passion into it. You won't stop. You will stay the course until the desired results are met. That is what commitment is, and it is the biggest component of the structure that builds a marriage. There is another factor that's almost as big, and that is communication. However, as important as communication is, it still falls beneath the umbrella of commitment. Why? Because if the commitment is there, then everything else will follow. Immaturity and irresponsibility. There is a saying in the manual. It's the small foxes that destroy the vine. Whenever we imagine damaging something, we tend to look for a big enough explosion that will cause the heaviest and most immediate impact. But in the case of a marriage, it is the small foxes, the little things, that destroy the vine. Immaturity and irresponsibility are the small foxes that are present inside of a marriage, eating away at the vine. When the man exhibits these shortcomings, the marriage is hurtling towards doom. This might sound very biased, and I understand that there are exceptions to the rule. However, nowhere in the doling out of punishments did God state, "Your desire will be to please each other." Neither did it say that the male and female would rule over each other. The curse went one way. If the person who is cursed that she must please her husband reaches a place where she gets frustrated and wants nothing to do with him, what does that tell us about the husband? A man has to be really, really lousy to make somebody that is cursed to want to please him turn around and resent him. The female advantage. Generally, in the culture that I grew up in, a woman and man of the same age are not truly in the same age bracket. Generally, the female is 5 to 7 years more mature than the male. When I was young, I used to wonder why all the females in my class were so ahead of the males. Most of the females I met were more level-headed and settled than their male counterparts, with a few exceptions. I saw it again when I became a teacher in the classroom. The females did their work. They, generally, did better in class. They were constantly at the top of the class. Even outside of the school setting, in different communities and environments, this theme was repeated. Years later, I realized why. Females have many advantages over a male that make them more responsible and mature. The first advantage is the female's accessibility to mentors. As discussed in earlier chapters, a woman has no shortage of mentors. There are women around her, constantly telling her to dress, sit, and act like a lady. This consistent instruction makes a woman grow into maturity faster than a male. The second advantage is closely tied with the first. Females are given chores. Traditionally, the woman is known as the keeper of the house, but she does not start to fill this role when she's married. As a young girl, females are usually responsible for household management such as washing, sweeping, mopping, and cooking. A mother equips her daughter for marriage by placing these tasks on her shoulders and reminding her that this and more will be required of her later on. She learns to do these activities and becomes accustomed to it until it becomes a natural way of life. When the day comes that she is in her own home, she is fully prepared to care for it. But while the young daughter is sweeping, mopping, cooking, and doing laundry, what does the male do? From my experience, many times, the males are on the street playing marble. They are playing basketball or football. They're hanging out at the street corner. They're drifting aimlessly because there are no males in the home to bring them under their wings and teach them what to do. Lastly, a female has an advantage called a menstrual cycle. Some girls as young as 9 years old begin experiencing this cycle. The biological factors and the female's response to them will start to groom her into becoming a responsible and mature person. A woman's menstrual cycle occurs every 28 to 30 days. the woman has to note her personal biological schedule to prepare and plan for when this time comes around. An unprepared female learns very quickly why they must gauge their menstrual cycle. To avoid embarrassment, she will prepare herself in advance by packing along a certain color of underwear, or even extra underwear. She'll pack medication and painkillers. She will be careful to check herself every now and again to make sure she does not have to change her pads. This menstrual cycle happens every single month. Every month, the female body teaches lessons in mature behavior. But it isn't only in preparing for the menstrual cycle that a female is taught responsibility. For some, when this period comes around, they experience pain. Despite the agony, the female cannot give an absence from school, or they will miss classes every 4 or 5 days out of the month. Most women bear the pain. They get up and go to school, go to work, cook and clean and pick up the kids as if nothing is happening, while their body is tearing inside. Unfortunately for men, they don't have this cycle, and, many times, they don't have mentors the way that women do. Because of their nurturing design, females are far more committed to their family than a male who is jumping all over the place. Without male mentors in the home, more and more irresponsible males are created. A message to those in marriage prep stage. For those reading this book before marriage, know that irresponsibility and immaturity are closely intertwined. These are sicknesses that should be caught before you say, "I do." But when they end up inside of a marriage, like a parasite, they begin to eat away at the foundation of a relationship. And if that foundation isn't a solid one, it all comes crashing down. These behaviors must be identified and addressed before they destroy the vine. The Ostrich Principle. Ignorance is the equivalent of an ostrich sticking its head into a hole. The ostrich feels safe with his head in the sand, but it fails to realize that his whole body is sticking out. Ignorance is not an excuse for damaging a marriage. In fact, ignorance is an indicator that a person is immature and needs training. In the case of a female who is looking to get into a marriage, know that ignorance is an indicator that you should pause, reassess, or walk away. When a man is immature or irresponsible, it means he is not aware of the value of a thing. He has no understanding of how to handle the responsibility of what he's been given. This lack of understanding causes serious problems in a marriage. A man who does not know what his responsibility, role, and function inside a marriage is won't know what not to do. He won't know how to interpret the language that a woman speaks, or how to protect, provide, and give identity. If a person doesn't know that fire burns, it will still burn him if he touches it. When the male is ignorant of what is required of him as the head of the home, he will stumble along making mistakes he could avoid. Ultimately, ignorance, too, can destroy a marriage. Chapter 7. The Key of Coming to Yourself. The Pigsty Moment. The first step in strengthening and repairing a marriage is recognizing where we as the male have gone wrong. Many times in relationships, men will eagerly cast the blame on the woman, just as the first father did. The blame game is very easy, as it frees the male from having to do any work. He can kick up his heels and say, "I'm okay because something is wrong with that person." Hence, the reason that this book goes so hard on the male. The pressure is on the man to understand that, regardless of what happens in a marriage, he is responsible, and it is his job to fix it. We must ask ourselves, do I care about my relationship strongly enough that I'm willing to change something I do to repair it? When a male comes to the point of admitting he wants to change and fix the marriage, even if he feels that nothing is wrong with himself, that is the first step. In the manual, after the prodigal son came to himself, he made a plan. He decided to go back to his father's house. Even the servants were eating better than he was. He was in a crisis and recognized that he needed a solution. So he strategized how he would get back home and what he would say when he did. This is important to note. The prodigal son didn't just come to himself. That's a very good step, but it's not enough. Simply coming to a realization won't get you anywhere. Immediately after coming to himself, he planned, he researched, and he set new goals. Next, and most importantly, he got up and began to walk out those plans. The prodigal son headed towards his father's house, knowing that he might be turned back or ridiculed. He accepted that he might work as a servant, and we all know what would have happened if it had been left up to his older brother. Luke 15:11-32. Still, he got up and moved. Those 3 steps represent the 3 moves that someone must make to repair anything in life. He must first come to his senses and become aware of what is happening. He must make a plan with goals and steps. Lastly, he must get up and make a move. The mind is not the heart. The manual talks about a war that we are in, and, to my surprise, we are not in this war with swords and guns. The war is in our minds. How we think, principles, mentalities. 2 Corinthians 10:4-5. The mind also helps us make decisions on a daily basis. If someone's hand is burning, he will move it out of the fire. That's the mind. That's instincts. This book serves to deal with the mind because the mind drives the body and the soul. The mind drives where a person will end up for eternity. The battle is in the mind, and so the mind is a powerful thing. Take control of the mind, and you've taken control of the person. That's why commercials and advertisements seek to tantalize the mind. Once the mind is convinced, everything else will follow. But the heart is even more powerful than the mind. The mind is like a doorway. It is where we feed things into the heart. What we see, what we hear, and what we experience, whether good or bad. According to the manual, a man's heart is desperately wicked, Jeremiah 17:9. And it is also where all the meaningful things exist. Once someone decides something in their heart, it is done. The manual is very clear when it comes to this. We're told to guard our heart because out of the heart flows the issues of life. Proverbs 4:23. The heart is so powerful that if a man looks at a woman in his heart and lusts after her, he has already committed adultery. Matthew 5:28. It also says, if we confess with our mouth and believe with our heart, Romans 10:9, we will be saved. With our mind, we can tell people anything to throw them off the scent. We can let them believe what we wish, like a smokescreen or a screensaver. But when the heart decides something, our entire being is in it, and we are willing to risk our lives. So, when it comes to a marriage, a very key issue is that a person has decided in his heart to commit, to change, or to love. The importance of the heart. Nowadays, everyone uses the word love. People can casually tell a person that they love them and not mean it. For a relationship to be successful, it requires the true meaning of love. Love comes from the heart and is not based on emotions. If someone has chosen a relationship in his heart, that relationship will be strong. Marriage is not a conditional contract. There is no clause that says the male has to be happy and the wife must do everything right before he can function as her husband. He must make the decision in his heart and stick to it, no matter what. In this case, I am talking especially about the male. The female is already cursed to want to please her husband, and that he will rule over her. The manual calls her the weaker vessel, 1 Peter 3:7, so that is a given. But when the male decides, in his heart, that this is it, his resolve will be the key ingredient to a successful, long-lasting relationship. My hope is that all the information in this book reaches the heart, and that it spurs a heart decision. Information can only feed the mind, but the mind is too flexible. If we want real change to start, if we want to get anything done, then it begins in the heart. Chapter 8. The Key of Dating Dynamics. Dating for Strength. To repair a marriage that has been struggling, we need to go back to the basics and revisit where the relationship was before it became complicated. In the beginning stages of dating, a couple lives in a perpetual state of passion and awe. These emotions are stirred at first sight and spur a desire to find out more about each other. With no physical intimacy involved at this early stage, the couple's energy, attention, and heart are focused. This is especially true for the male. He is on his best behavior because he wants to make a good impression. As anyone who wants to land a deal or make a sale, the couple will outline the goal and put in the effort to accomplish it. Gifts are given, trips are taken. Hours are spent talking to each other in the car or over the phone. Note that courtship does not mean physical intimacy. It is, instead, where the male shows what he is capable of. During this time, he convinces the female that he is someone she can trust, someone she can grow old with, someone she can spend the rest of her life with. During the dating stage, it is in the hands of the male to reveal his ability to meet a female's need, affection, and he usually passes this test with flying colors. If someone wants to bring back a marriage that is going off track, a key step is going back to dating, a time when hours were spent together, hearing each other out, pampering each other, and taking care of each other. Men are visual creatures. For females, returning to the dating stage may involve more effort in their appearance. Men are visual creatures, and when a woman tries to pay attention to how she dresses in the house, it is very effective. I realize this may be difficult to accomplish, as the woman took on the work curse, and thus has little time to worry about how she looks. But understanding how men think is important in returning to the basics. Both men and women try to show their good side during courting. They make special efforts in this early stage of the relationship, but those efforts are slowly abandoned during marriage. For example, one lady that I was reaching out to informed me that her husband had left her. Newly single, she started to do her hair, wear nicer clothes, and had this beautiful look. A few weeks later, the same husband who left her looked at her and said, "I have never seen you look so beautiful." On the opposite end, I remember visiting someone's house, and the wife swaggered out looking like the husband's little brother. She had on long three-quarter pants that were modest enough to wear in a church, and her shirt was older than their oldest child. As comfortable as this outfit may have been, and as suitable as it was for lounging around the house, and maybe even sleepwear, it lacked any of the appeal that she had during the dating stage. Now, whether a woman dresses up or not, the responsibility to repair and nurture the relationship is still on the male. However, for the romantic side of things, it would help for a woman to pay attention to how she keeps herself. Ladies, feel free to dress up now and again. Don't get so burdened that you neglect looking a certain way for your husband. An even playing field. In the dating stage, the female has equal, if not more, authority than the male, because she hasn't said, "I do" yet. This is especially so for couples who aren't physically intimate. Courtship allows the woman the opportunity to evaluate what she's getting herself into. It is a golden chance to observe the male and ensure that everything she sees in him is what she wants. In a similar way, returning to the dating stage after marriage allows for a temporary switch in authority from the male back to the female because the husband has temporarily lost his place. Now it is the woman's job to sift him out because she is considering taking him back. In an ideal world, a female will not wait until after marriage to make these observations, but will be armed with the information and knowledge to do so before the "I do." However, when the damage has been done and a couple is attempting to return to the basics, it is imperative that the female makes her observations then. Note that these principles apply whether the couple is married, about to be married, or if they are just beginning a new relationship. The two most important types of love. In a marriage, there are two important types of love: eros and agape. The agape love is the most important because it is unconditional. It is the love that will keep any relationship strong and together. If you agape love someone, you will not do things to hurt them. In fact, you will be willing to sacrifice yourself. For example, in agape love, a man's desire for another woman would be put aside because, if he is willing to give up his life, then to give up a temporary desire is nothing. Ladies, when a man comes and tells you he loves you, a big question to ask in the back of your mind, don't ask them straightforward because they will tell you what you want to hear, is, are you talking about agape or eros? If it is eros, sexual love, then there are plenty of people who find you attractive and love you too. But for a long-lasting, meaningful relationship, much more than eros is required. Here's another example. A man goes out and cheats on his wife. He returns after a year to tell her that he loves her, and he realizes he made a terrible mistake. Though it may be tempting for her to just accept him back, this love needs to be tested to see whether it's agape or eros, of which the only acceptable love is agape. For those already married or considering marriage, note that this observation takes time and should not be rushed. Determining the type of love that is being placed in front of you cannot be a one-off evaluation, but should take careful, intricate assessment. Chapter 9. The Key of Male Observation. Observe his heart. Ladies, if things have broken down, say the man has been out playing around, but he's back and willing to repair the marriage, I recommend you do everything you can to observe his heart before taking him back. Simply saying, he wants to return home, or he wants to earn your trust, is not enough, as there could be many reasons for his sudden repentance. He could be falling back on emotions. Maybe he feels sorry or guilty. Maybe the other woman left him, and so he has nowhere else to go. The heart of a truly open and committed man differs from the heart of the man banking on his fallback wife. One heart is willing to change, the other heart only wants to manipulate. The job of the female is to use this second dating opportunity as a chance to evaluate where his heart really lies and what his true intentions are. And don't tell him what you're doing either, or he'll be on his best behavior, just as he was in the pre-marriage courting stage. Don't give information. Just silently flip into observance mode. Observe how he treats the women in his life. Ladies, if this all sounds overwhelming, don't worry. The manufacturer put measurement systems in place to assist in testing and observing the heart of a male. One such system is in the strategic placement of females in his life. How he treats these females is a measurement stick, indicating how he will treat you. A common measurement stick is a mother. The beauty of a mother is that she loves her son to death. He could be the wickedest person, but it generally doesn't matter, as her motherly love takes over. Observe how he speaks to his mother when angry or annoyed. If a man cannot make his own mother happy, this does not bode well for his wife. A sister is another good measurement stick. So are female teachers, female pastors, and female co-workers. Silently observe what these women say about him and how he behaves around them. Maybe you didn't notice these things before dating, or you noticed them in marriage but feel you're stuck. Take special note of it and pay attention. Remember that you have just as much authority as he does when you're in the dating stage. This evaluation of his female interactions is powerful because there will be times in marriage when romance and romantic attraction are challenged by external forces. The truth is, romance does not guarantee a strong marriage. Observation checklist. What are you, as a female, looking for from these measurements? Observe how he treats these women. Observe how he talks about them. Observe how he operates around them. If the females around him complain that he never listens, he likes having his own way, or he treats his mother badly, take note. If his sister always complains that he doesn't listen to her, or that he's always arguing with her, take note. Your job is to silently make a checklist of what they are saying about him, because, after a while in marriage, when all the puppy love and infatuation is gone, you become just like a sister to him, and he'll treat you the same way he treats his mom, his sister, or his female boss. The little cocoon of love is buying time. Like a baby in the womb being fed by the placenta, the emotions and the infatuation that feed you will run out sooner or later in marriage, and you need to know what will remain after birth to keep you fed. Don't ask, observe. In conversations, you'll hear. In varying situations, you'll see. Take special note of how he treats the women in his life who have expectations of him. His mother, his co-workers, his teachers, his sisters. If those women in his life talk positively about him, you're on a good track. If they have negative things to say, you have to be prepared to take what you get. Make a note of these cues you are seeing and hearing. If you observe his behaviors with his mom, sister, or with female authorities, and you notice that he has a terrible time with them, then, at this point, your recommendation and encouragement should be for him to seek help. Let that be a requirement towards repairing the relationship and a barrier of entry before he gains your trust. Wise as a serpent, quiet as a fox. I must stress how important it is to run these tests silently. With an inanimate object or artificial intelligence, you can ask directly and whatever answer they give back is true. For an emotional being that is intelligent and has a hidden agenda, they can very easily twist the truth when asked, or figure out what you're looking for and tailor a smokescreen custom fit for you. In an attempt to deceive, they'll give you exactly what you're asking for to conceal their true selves a little longer. The way to get the best, purest, and most trustworthy results is to observe a man without making it known. Your job is to become the perfect observer. To those ladies who are reading this book before marriage, it's best to learn this skill early. You can either observe now and enjoy a good life, or not, and pay later. To me, this is a reason why marriages don't last. What brings a couple to marry is surface deep, and not enough to hold them together for years to come. Ladies considering marriage, you have the opportunity to observe him before saying, "I do." Take it. And take it seriously. If the kind of commitment you are looking for is not present before marriage, there is no guarantee it will show up after. A genuine heart is what you're looking for, and you don't need to be married to find it. To the wives, I must stress that observing doesn't mean fixing. Whenever the female has the upper hand, she has the power to make demands for change, such as the counseling sessions and external therapy outlined above. This can only happen before he walks back in. The minute he moves back in, your power is gone again. The Relationship Litmus Test. Your job as a male is to make sure that whenever any of these women in your life talk about you, they talk as you would want your mate to. Your mother, sister, female coworker, pastor, or boss must speak about how kind you are, how caring, how courteous, how much of a gentleman you are. These females are divinely set around us, but many times we fight the golden opportunities that they bring. Example 2. One day, a student of mine complained that his female teacher was moody. He explained that he'd gotten a call in his class and was scolded for answering his cell phone. I spoke to him, calmly pointing out a simple truth. If he knew this teacher was moody, why would he answer a call in her class, knowing it would only frustrate her more? He gave no real reply. That encounter with the teacher was a test my student failed. It was his job to adjust what he did around the teacher to keep out of trouble. Instead of fighting her, he should have found some reason to bring a smile to her face. When he left her classroom, he should have left her in a better mood than when he met her. In a few years, that 15-year-old will want to go out in the world and marry a woman. He will discover that a wife goes through moods. Sometimes it is hormonal, from her period, menopause, or pregnancy. And sometimes she's just feeling emotional, tired, or upset. When my student's wife gets moody, how will he deal with her? God has been gracious enough to surround us with females. Your ability to function with these human measuring sticks is invaluable. These females are credible as an influence and a meter in your life. Why? Because all the things that a teacher, a mother, or a coworker/boss goes through, your wife will go through. She will have her period and be moody. She will have moments of anger, pain, or sorrow. There will be times when she is just chewing off every head that passes. Don't be like my student. Let the women in your life speak highly of you, the way you want your wife to. Make it your aim. Make it your mission. Use these females in your life as practice for similar challenges in marriage. How to never have a problem with any woman. Being surrounded by female teachers and bosses is not a bad thing. If we just slightly adjust how we look at it, we can access a ton of useful information and attitudes. After learning how to relate to women, I, for the most part, don't have problems with ladies because I understand whether I am dealing with an authority or dealing with a female. See, one female can wear two hats, and learning to recognize which hat she is wearing at any point in time will guide you on how to approach her. If I am dealing with an authority or boss, I give her honor and respect. And if I'm dealing with a female, then I sharpen my female communication skills by practicing on that person. Dealing with other females gives men a wealth of opportunity to stop, come out of ourselves, and look and see how we're functioning as the man. As discussed in the previous chapter, the first step in repairing a marriage is by coming to yourself and realizing that even though it's not my fault, I need to fix this. Only you can do that. A wife cannot fix you. Remember, the responsibility falls squarely on the male's shoulders. It is his job to meet his wife's needs. The number one way to do so is to learn her language. Listen to her, and try to hear what she's saying from her heart, and not from her mouth. We discuss how to do that in the next chapter. Chapter 10. The Key of Womanese, Part 1. Communication is key. Men grow up naturally knowing the language of males, but very few know the language of females. Without this knowledge, it is easy to wander around blind. Imagine a warning sign written in a different language. The sign says, "Keep out, don't swim, alligators." But the tourist gets into the water because he cannot interpret the message. If the unsuspecting diver jumps in, innocent in his ignorance, he will meet an innocent alligator who thought that their next meal read the sign. Communication is paramount for the repair and strengthening of marriages. The ability to speak each other's language promotes fluidity and efficiency. The inability to communicate spells disaster. In the manual, early settlers decided they wanted to build a tower to get to heaven. Genesis 11:6-7. In those days, everyone spoke one language, had one understanding, one heart, and one goal. The manufacturer decided to destroy communication, explaining that if humans continued in this condition, whatever they planned would come to pass. This is not to say that he is against communication, but in this particular case, the common goal would have been disastrous. To be effective and efficient, the manufacturer interfered with one of the most powerful means of communication: verbal communication. He gave them different languages. For their own safety, the manufacturer did not want them to build a tower. Creating different languages caused instant separation and was effective in destroying their oneness of heart. The same is true in a marriage. If there is no communication and oneness of heart, that will cause separation. On the other hand, if there is a proper communication, there will be understanding and togetherness. And this is why it is important for a man to learn the language of women. Conflict is an inevitable symptom of more than one person abiding together. Communication is vital to resolving and even preventing arguments. It can therefore be said that without good communication, the relationship cannot be a success. Womanese, the language of the female. Women and men communicate on two different frequencies. Tapping into the female's frequency allows you, as the male, to understand what is really happening in her heart. If a person is traveling to a Spanish-speaking country, learning Spanish will allow him to move around much more easily. Likewise, learning Womanese can help males navigate around females. Womanese is a language, a communication device, a relationship protocol. Acquiring the skill of Womanese means that you, as the male, have a direct connection, a diagnostic link, a high-speed line to her heart, so you understand what is being said beneath her words. Why is it the male's responsibility to lock onto this unique frequency and make sure communication is successful? As the authority, the male has the upper hand. The female's desire is to please her husband, and he will rule over her. The evading of communication is not on the woman's end. Trust me, her communication will be there. Women can't help it. They will make it known they're unhappy. The problem is what you think they're unhappy with could be misleading. When teaching this concept in my class, I draw a little stick woman on my blackboard. I'd put a heart on her, which would be around the chest area. The heart. That is where a woman speaks from. Next, I would draw a stick man and put an arrow to his lips. The mouth. That is where the man speaks from. If you'd like to see a visual example of this principle, you can look at the book cover. What you think a woman is unhappy with could be smoke, and the smoke could be an issue that is real or not, but, most of all, it is a sign that there is a fire behind it. Your job, as the male, is to find the fire. To do so, you can't run after the smoke only. Neither can you say, "Okay, it's just smoke and there's nothing burning." It is your responsibility to go and find out why there is smoke. When a woman speaks to you, she is speaking from her heart, especially if she's unhappy. You can't take what comes from her mouth, as this is only an outlet for the smoke. How to learn Womanese. First, you cannot address what is coming from the woman's mouth. If you address her only from that surface level, you are telling her something else, that you don't want to hear what she has to say, that you prefer a quarrel, that she is not that valuable, that you are not interested in how she feels. Taking what a woman says at face value may feel like a brush-off to her, as it gives the perception that you aren't interested in digging deeper to find out what is behind the smoke. She has hidden the true treasure of her heart from view. This is where Womanese comes in. Womanese allows you to hear what's coming from her heart. After, it's your decision if you want to address the true problem or calm things down. Example 3. A man wanted to treat his family to ice cream. They visited the ice cream parlor and went through the menu. The wife saw a chocolate sundae and ordered it. The man exclaimed, "That costs $10. The woman asked, "So what? I'm not worth $10? Her husband stammered out a defensive reply. "Of course not. I just was saying—" By then, it was too late. He'd made the grave mistake of responding to what she said by her mouth. So, the wife gets upset. The children squirm. The man is bewildered and annoyed. All he wanted to do was treat his family to ice cream, and he ended up in a quarrel about $10 that he would gladly spend on her. In this example, the quarrel was not based on the cost, but the message. The wife speaks her language, Womanese, and not the male's language, Manglish. She interpreted her husband's word to mean that, in his heart, she wasn't even worth $10 to him. If he'd understood her language, he would not have responded to what she'd said from her mouth, because the moment he did so, he revealed that he was ignoring what she was truly feeling in her heart. He needed to have stopped, listened to her language, and realized that she feels unappreciated. He should have addressed that. Right away, his attention should have turned from the cost of an ice cream to her value. He should have reiterated her worth, giving identity. Humans are very sensitive creatures, and women are even more sensitive emotionally. That moment in the ice cream store was the perfect opportunity to reinforce what she meant to him, the way he would have when they were dating. The question she posed is also a warning of a deeper problem. By her snapping at him about his reaction to the cost of an ice cream, she is saying that she is not sure where she falls in his priorities. Again, he should have picked up on that. He, as a male, should have helped to bring back her confidence and left her with a smile on her face. That is womanese in action, where we don't listen to what a woman says with her mouth, but we hear what she says with her heart. Please keep in mind, even in my experience, after carefully controlling my responses and editing my behavior to be as agreeable as I can, I have found that a woman's emotions are very, very tender and vulnerable things. Similar to a rose, one must take caution in how he cares for it. Other examples of womanese. Here are a few other phrases a frustrated woman might say. You don't empty the dirt box. You don't clean the bathroom. You're always out. These grumblings might build and build until they erupt into a giant argument. But we're looking at the moments before the big fight. When a woman continues saying things like that, you have to ask yourself, what is she saying? The mouth is saying something, but what is the heart saying? Possible explanations are, she feels you're not home enough. She feels overwhelmed. She wants some attention. A man, because he speaks Manglish, expects that what the woman says from her mouth is what she means. If he is not careful, he might fail to understand that what she is saying from the mouth is actually a layer of protection for what's in her heart. In the manual, it says God loves to hide things, and it's the pleasure of kings to seek it out. Proverbs 25:2. The principle behind this statement is a principle of authority. A person is the authority when it comes to their own heart, and it is natural for them to want to protect their heart. As the authority over her own heart, a woman will naturally hide her true feelings because she will protect them. It should be your manly pleasure to seek it out. And she will be observing if it is, because that will show her that you truly care for her. Use a female's words as a symptom to tell you that something is wrong or needs attention. Next, look beyond those words and start to investigate the heart so you can address the real issue. Learning the principle of womanese defines a long-lasting relationship. If you, as the male, are not willing to do that, then there will be a lot of rocky roads ahead, and it might end in a way that you are not happy with. But if you are willing to learn the female's language, you can last a lifetime. Because if you can speak womanese, if you can tap into the female frequency and foster strong communication, you'll build a long-lasting relationship that's stronger than any tower. What is hidden is valuable. A woman instinctively hides her heart, and it is the job of those who want to find out what is hidden to seek it out. If you are looking for it, you'll find the answers all over the place. The manual says wisdom is in the street, crying. Proverbs 1:20. This book seeks to encourage a heart condition, a way of thinking, not a shortcut or quick fix. In the earlier chapter, we discussed that the way you operate with a female teacher, pastor, mother, or sister is your opportunity to learn womanese. Unfortunately, men squander these lessons and complain about the measuring sticks instead. We fling around comments such as, "She's behaving like she's having her menstrual cycle. She just likes to complain. I'm tired of her. She just likes to pick on me. She doesn't like me." A man can get away with saying these things about females they don't have to live with, but these excuses crumble when applied to a marriage. Interacting with these measuring stick females is an educational hub that permits males to develop their skills as a husband in preparation for marriage. Womanese is a foreign language, but it is not impossible to learn. Knowing what to look for is your biggest key. Wanting to fix a relationship, wanting it to be the best it can be, or wanting to develop yourself before you enter one. Maybe you're not in a relationship yet and you just want to learn the skills, is the type of heart that is necessary. Every woman's particular womanese is different, but the technique to understand them is the same. The right heart, coupled with the knowledge gained from this book, can make a man fluent in the language of his female. Can a woman teach a man womanese? The female is designed with a failsafe in mind that hides information. Because of the curse, they are already at a disadvantage, which is why they must take measures to protect themselves in order to ensure they have chosen the right mate. When a female is looking for the right person, she must observe whether that person is willing to navigate her language and needs. As a female, you shouldn't have to give him the answers. When it comes to womanese, even inside a marriage, the roles change. In this case, the woman is now the king and has the authority because it is her heart that is being guarded. A king would not go around trying to change his ways so the people under him can understand him better. The king expects his noblemen to make that effort, or they are not worthy to be in his presence. The manual says, "Therefore shall a man leave his mother and father, and cleave to his wife." Mark 10:7. If you, as the male, want to take a woman out of her house, if you want her to leave mommy and daddy and spend the rest of her life with you, and trust her emotional, physical, and spiritual safety with you, you must come with some kind of ability. You cannot expect the woman to teach you that. That is irresponsible. It is similar to a man wanting to do a job that he hasn't gotten any training for. Imagine someone wanting to be a chauffeur, but he doesn't even have a driver's license. Similarly, it is the male's responsibility to be sure that he is complete and whole before entering a marriage. Chapter 11. The Key of Womanese, Part 2. Become a marriage mechanic. Imagine one day your car doesn't want to start. You take it to a mechanic, explaining that you're tired of the vehicle not working and you're desperate to fix it. The mechanic informs you that your car needs a new battery first. You buy the battery for $200 and take it to the mechanic. He fixes it and informs you that your starter needs to be changed next. Upon hearing this, do you, as the owner, grab a baseball bat and reshape the car because you're tired of it? No. The owner will go and buy a starter. And if, when the mechanic is done, he needs a fuse because the starting circuit is still damaged, the owner will buy a fuse. Why? Because the end result of taking a car to the mechanic is to get it back again. The heart is to see it running, not to destroy it further. There's even an industry built around car restoration. Experts take old cars that even the junkyard would reject, restore them, and bring them back to their former glory. Normal folks look at an old beat-up car and say it is not good, but a mechanic or restorer will work until the car gleams. That is all because of the heart. If the heart is to make something work, then nothing is out of reach. Therefore, treat the marriage the way a mechanic would treat a car. That is an important key in repairing/maintaining the relationship. Don't play defense. Back in the day, whenever my wife was unpleased with me, she would say, "You know, in the past, one of the things I used to love about you was that you were never defensive. You could take anything I was saying, analyze it, and bring it back to me with a solution." This happened because we were dating, and I was putting in all the effort I could to make her mine. But, during marriage, everything she said I took personally. Nothing had changed, except that she was now my wife, and she was seeing the real me. Not taking things personally is easier said than done. A wife's defense is her mouth. With her words, she will cut you, jab you, and give you low blows. From her mouth, she communicates her unhappiness. But if you react from what is being flung on that level, you'll miss the point. Being defensive means that you are literally listening to what the wife is saying from her mouth. You're taking her words as gold, while the gold is buried in the heart. Why is being defensive dangerous? It cuts off your lifeline, it cuts off your repair line, it distracts you so valuable resources are used up in feeding the defensive mindset. It may end up becoming more destructive. Instead of taking it personally, go back to your basics, which is Womanese. Try to get to the heart. What is being said in her heart? Your mirror doesn't lie. When you get defensive at your wife, you're getting mad at your own reflection. Remember, the wife is your mirror. When you look at her, when you observe her behavior, you are observing yourself. If your wife is always happy, you have a lot to do with it. If your wife dresses well and looks well, you have a lot to do with it. If your wife is bitter, you have a lot to do with it. And, more than that, you are responsible for it. Maybe you're not responsible directly. For example, it could be her job that has her bitter. However, you should be at a place where you can encourage her to change jobs or to stop working, and you, as her husband, will take care of her. You should be in a place to say, "Darling, working was not your curse. That's mine." Or you can at least be there to listen and give encouragement to her. So getting defensive means that, right away, you are not accepting your responsibility. It might not be your fault, but we're not talking about fault here. This is beyond fault. This is shifting into mechanic mode and coming up with a solution that can repair something that is valuable and dear to you. The big question. At the end of the day, the big question is, what value is the marriage to you, and what value does your wife hold? Your wife should be your best friend, and you should be a place of refuge and peace for her, a place where she can come home and hide, a place where her heart is safe, a place where she feels like a person of value. If you are that place for your wife, then you will give her the best life that she could ever have. How do you know if you, as the husband, are that refuge? If you're hearing compliments from your wife that she's glad to have married you, If your wife is not bitter or complaining about you. If your wife is happy, satisfied, and singing your praises because of how you operate. If these conditions apply to you, that means you are doing a good job. Don't be abusive, physically. To the men, your wife is not a punching bag. She did not agree to leave her mother and father's house so she could join you in the ring. You did not give birth to her, so you should not put your hands on her. Violence is out. It should be out. If you are that angry, go and break something else. Go take it out on a coconut tree. Go take a walk and cool off. Don't be violent. And you should be working on your relationship so that there are as few arguments as possible, and no argument that reaches to the level where you are thinking of violence. Arguments are good. Nobody loves them, and we know who always wins them. But calm disagreements are a result of more than one person abiding together in a relationship, whether it's work, or friendship, or family. Once again, don't get violent. Not only is it against the law, but you, as the male, should treat your wife as your own body. And if you don't love your own body, you should not have a wife. Don't be abusive, sexually. First, understand that legally there can be rape, even inside of a marriage. However, if you are doing what you're supposed to be doing, protecting, providing, giving identity, and communicating, and if you're doing it right, you will not be able to keep your wife off you. There will always be a consensual, loving relationship where you want to be with each other. Don't be abusive, verbally. Picture a woman living at her parents' home. She is a lady who grew up in a good family, and she means the world to them. She is her mother and father's baby. Now a man swaggers into the picture and drags her out of her family's home with a marriage certificate and a ring. They live together on the understanding that she will be treated similarly or even better than when she was with her parents. Instead of doing so, the husband calls her she-dog and curses her out. He tells her how bad she looks, that she's good for nothing, and that she's a waste of time. He breaks her down until she feels like nothing. This is verbal abuse, and it is almost as bad as hitting. Usually, verbal abuse is like a gateway drug to violence. So, if you feel the urge to say something hurtful, refrain. Just keep quiet. No words is better than bad words. The manual says, with our mouth, we can speak life or we can speak death. Proverbs 18:21. It goes further and explains that the tongue is like a rudder. James 3:4-5. A small rudder can steer a big ship, so stay quiet until you cool off. After you've settled, check why you're getting so angry all the time. If your wife is angering you, investigate further. Ask yourself why she is getting you angry. She should make you happy, and you should be making her happy. If she's getting you angry, what is she returning back to you that you're giving her? Some wounds are beneficial. Not getting defensive, not taking it personally, and changing your mindset will radically shift the course of a damaged marriage. This is not easy to do. It is natural to snap at our wives when they point out our flaws. It is instinctive to consider it as a threat to our manhood or as something negative. However, we should be using their observations as a catalyst, a mirror and a meter to show us where to adjust. Be open to listening to what your wife is saying. She loves you. She is not spouting negativity because she hates you. In fact, her concerns are one of the first signs that you need to get a checkup. Consider her words, even if it hurts, especially if it hurts. According to the manual, the wound of a friend is better than the kiss of an enemy. Proverbs 27:6. Example 4. I watched a pirate movie some years ago that exemplified this principle. The head pirate had a best friend, Doc. Doc was not only the on-ship medical doctor, but also the advisor to the head pirate. After ruling the seas for many years, these pirates got caught in a feud with a new kid in town who wanted to take over the seas. The opposing captain had bigger ships, more weapons, and a crew that outnumbered the head pirate by thousands. The head pirate knew that this would be their last battle. His second-in-command grew restless and confronted the head pirate. He began to question him and disrespect his authority. Calmly, the head pirate stood, took out his weapon, and shot his best friend, Doc, in the leg. I was watching the movie and I was stunned. His friend, Doc, also looked surprised and seemed more hurt by the betrayal than the bullet. The head pirate pointed towards Doc, who was bleeding on the floor, and warned his crew not to mess with him. The movie continued, and, in the end, I realized what had happened. The head pirate, realizing that they would not win the battle, knew that he would not be able to dissuade his best friend from joining the fight. By shooting Doc on board the ship, he forced his friend to leave the vessel and seek medical treatment in the city where they were docked. When Doc was safe, the head pirate made his escape. Although shooting Doc in the leg seemed bad, it was a life-saving move by Doc's best friend. Your wife should be your best friend, and if she tells you that something is wrong with you, it might seem negative, like a bullet to the leg. But keep in mind, it's coming from somebody that cares about you and is trying to save you. Use it as an opportunity to look at yourself and evaluate yourself. Chapter 12. The Key of Completeness. What does it mean to be whole? A man being whole, or as some would say, being single, refers to being complete. When a male has the correct training and foundation to bear the heavy responsibility of a wife and family on his shoulders, he enters the marriage with the right tools for success. But, sadly, and in a sense, innocently, many times a man is not trained, equipped, or groomed to become a husband, and therefore often enters a marriage as incomplete. So how do we know whether a man is capable of this responsibility? More specifically, how do we know whether or not the male is ready for marriage? Here are a couple questions to ask. Is he mature or immature? Is he having trouble deciding whether he wants a man or a woman as a mate? Is he capable of holding a job, or does he even have one? Is he a drunkard? Is he full of anger, thin-skinned, or has no control over his temper? Has he been trained in how to be a father and how to be a good husband to his wife? These are the things that make a male incomplete, and they need to be developed before he enters a serious relationship or says, "I do." The truth is particularly hard to swallow, but it is the reason why many relationships end up broken. It's also the reason why I like to say that the best time to marry a man is after he has passed through 2 or 3 divorces. During those relationships, especially if they are relationships that lasted for years, the male learns what he should do. In this case, the marriage has become his training. It's like joining a basketball tournament, but you've never played the sport, so you scramble to learn during the game. You foul with your first basket, hit the rim on the second, but every time you try and make another shot, you get better. Unfortunately, marriage is much graver than a basketball tournament, and training for marriage inside a marriage is a dangerous and painful way to become mature. It is better to enter a marriage whole, physically, mentally, and emotionally, for the best results. In a marriage, the man and the woman cultivate each other. But if a male tries to cultivate his wife, notice the word is not train or boss, but cultivate. He must be equipped with the right tools. If he is not whole, they will end up in trouble. What is beautiful in a marriage is when a wife can look at her husband and say, "Babes, you are so good to me. I don't deserve you." It's even more excellent when a husband can look at his wife and say, "It's amazing because I feel the same way about you. I don't deserve you." When both of you are complete, then, instead of barely having one entity inside the marriage, you have two complete and sound individuals, joined together. That unit is dense, powerful, and near unbreakable. The success of a relationship is highly affected by this principle. Therefore, it is imperative that, if no one else, the male in a relationship is complete. Is this biased towards women? Some might argue that the woman has to be mature too. In fact, I've heard men grumble that a lady being immature is why relationships don't work. This is untrue. And, if that were the case, how can an 18-year-old be mature enough to enter a marriage with a 60-year-old? It may surprise you, but that particular relationship could outlast a conventional similar-age relationship. Why? Because the responsibility is on the male, not the female. The man is the head. He does not have the curse to please the woman, and he can turn her into anything he wants. He can turn her into an argumentative, bitter person and cultivate her thorns. Or he can tell her the things that he loves about her and cultivate her roses. She will listen and follow his direction because it is mandated by the manufacturer, the person who created us, that her desire will be for her husband. It is in her DNA to follow his lead. But when a wife tries to turn the tables and she needs her husband to change because he's immature or he is not whole, then there is a problem. According to the manual, she is equipped to be the helpmeet, Genesis 2:18. But how can a woman help a man who is immature? A man who, although he needs it, is not looking around for ideas and asking for help because he thinks he has it all together. The only time I blame females for a relationship going bad is when they are choosing a mate before marriage, and their criteria is based only on external factors. It is risky to realize that a man is not whole inside a marriage. Hence, the best way to ensure a healthy, long-lasting marriage is to check that the male possesses this maturity. Before the woman says, "I do," he should be tested and observed. It amazes me to think of the simpler things that we take more seriously than marriage. For example, to get a driving license, you have to be a certain age. You have to go and take a test. Just to drive on the road, you must show that you are qualified to function behind the wheel of a car. Similarly, higher expectations are given to getting a job. When applying for a position, you endure rigorous evaluations, background checks, and questions. No one hires you because you look good, unless they want you to be a model. Unfortunately, with something as precious as marriage, we seem to lack that patient observation and evaluation skill. When it comes to someone that you want to spend the rest of your life with, someone you as a female will give over your desire to, it's tempting to go and take somebody for frivolous reasons like looks, height, or possession. Marriage deserves more respect and deliberations in how we choose. But I'm already married. If you've already made your choice of mate, and, while living with him, you have found out that you made a mistake, you're in trouble. If you're lucky enough, the husband is willing to be helped. Or, if he has left you and now wants to come back, that is also a good position to be in. In that particular situation, it would be to your advantage to understand that everything that applies during dating applies now. And that's why we give dating advice in this book. Before you allow him back into your house, your bed, and your heart, he needs to be whole. For him to be whole, he might need to see a counselor, for months if necessary. He might need to be meticulously checked upon in the areas where he failed. Set all your tests and observations in place so that, before you say "I do" again, you know where you stand. Before you put yourself in the same position, ensure you have made a more solid choice this time. Unfortunately, if you, as a woman, find yourself in an unwanted marriage, these conditions are the only relief you have once your choice has been made. If the person leaves and wants to come back, or if he realizes that he needs help. Worst case scenario, if the person you chose passes away and you are going to choose again, you now have the resources and the tools to know how to make the right decision. Chapter 13. The Key of Value. The value of a wife. He who finds a wife finds a good thing. Proverbs 18:22. This is a very difficult principle to swallow, and it often gets pitted against another section of the manual that talks about a nagging wife. Proverbs 27:15. The disparity between the two statements is evident. One calls the wife good, and the other speaks about a wife being like a dripping faucet. Whenever this argument is presented, I have only one question. What is the wife nagging about? It is very easy to pull the nagging wife card, but when you dig deeper, you'll find that the wife is complaining about something the husband is neglecting to do, or something that he is doing that he should not be doing. Sure, a nagging wife is like a dripping faucet, but who caused the faucet to drip? In a house, if the faucet is leaking, whose job is it to fix it? He who finds a wife finds a good thing is a statement that leaves no room for misinterpretation. The moment the groom says, "I do," he has found a good thing. There is no clause, no conditions. Got a wife? Well, you have a good thing. If the good thing has turned into a leaking faucet, the responsibility is on the male to fix it. This responsibility on the man is so heavy that the manufacturer instructed one of his kingdom representatives to go and marry a prostitute, Hosea 1:2, to demonstrate this principle. When the prostitute-turned-wife ran back to her previous occupation, the kingdom official wanted to leave her, and many people would agree with him. But that doesn't answer the question. Why was her desire to go back stronger than her desire to please him? If she had been damaged by past hurts and promiscuity was second nature for her, how could he help her break that? God instructed him to go and get his wife, showing that, Even when the wife is a prostitute, the male does not have an excuse. Again, it is your wife, your responsibility. She is already a good thing. It is your job to awaken and cultivate that good thing if you are not seeing it. He had to go searching. Note that he had to find her. He had to approach the female and somehow convince her to leave her parents and her independent lifestyle behind to join their lives as one. The moment she said yes and they moved in together, he had everything, just like that. The good thing was there, whether it was undeveloped and needed to be cultivated, or whether it was already complete. Example 5. A man's distant relative dies, and he inherits land in the will. This is good land, which means he might be able to plant things, or it's in a good location. But if he does nothing with that land and just allows it to be uncared for and uncultivated, whether the land is good or not, he won't be able to experience and enjoy the fruits of it. It is the same with marriage. Accepting this point of view changes one's approach to the relationship. You, as the male, now know exactly what you have and how precious it is. You don't want to mess up the good thing. You want to care for it and make it better because it is there to be a helpmeet to you and assist you in accomplishing what you are called to do as a family. What you need is inside you. All the things that pertain to life and godliness are included in the product, and this is especially true for a woman. Many times, men blame the woman for the breakdown in the relationship. Following in the footsteps of Adam, we make excuses, point fingers, say, "It's her fault, she's this, she's that." The manual seeks to solve that problem before it becomes an issue. The wife is a good thing. Period. Therefore, a man doesn't have to waste time blaming her. He can spend that time seeing how he can repair the problem. In the manual, by instructing the official to marry the prostitute, the manufacturer proved that you can work on your wife and cultivate her as you want her to be. If a female's curse is that her desire is for you, then cultivating her shouldn't be hard. Example 6. I remember a couple where the wife grew up with her grandparents, and so she called her mother by her first name. The man felt uncomfortable whenever he saw her doing this, and he spoke to her about it, asking that she call her mother Mom. From that moment on, the wife shifted her language. That is cultivating. For argument's sake, let's pretend that a man married the one defective product in the billions. Fine. But what does that say of him and his insight if he chose someone that is not good? Why did he enter that relationship in the first place? No matter what arguments are presented, the responsibility cannot be escaped, and thus, the best method of repair is for the male to adjust his thinking. The minute they say, "I do," she is good. Everything the husband does from that point on should connect with this principle. My wife is my best friend. When conducting research for this book, I spoke to a couple who has been together for many years and who seem to fall more and more in love as the years go by. They have been an example in my life of how a woman and a man should function. I sat them down and asked them both what the secret to their successful marriage was. The husband responded, "My wife is my best friend. I cannot consider doing something to her that will hurt her. I can't afford that. I need her, and she is my everything." We discussed the priority of a wife in earlier chapters, but I believe it bears repeating. In a marriage that is being done right, nobody else should be more important to the husband than his wife. Not a mother or father or even children should be more important than the wife. She should be the first on the husband's list, second only to the manufacturer. In terms of priority, I told my wife from the beginning that she comes second. I am unapologetic about having someone that I love more than her, and that I would listen to more than her. And that person is God, the owner of the manual, the manufacturer. After God, the second most important person in my life is my wife, and she has no problem with that. In fact, she hides in that truth because she knows that, as long as I am faithful to God, I will be faithful to her. My wife is my best friend. Everything I do, I try to keep her in mind. She is the person I want to hang out with, the person I enjoy being around, the person I want to be the closest with, the person I can share my heart with. The manual says greater love has no one than this, to be willing to lay down their lives for a friend. John 15:13. Friendship defines the longevity and enjoyment of a relationship. You have friends because you enjoy being around them. For a male, your wife considering you as her friend is one of the greatest compliments you can be served in a marriage. The value of marriage according to two kingdoms. When it comes to understanding the value of the wife, the manual has instructions for two different types of citizens: those who live according to the manufacturer's instructions and those who don't. As human beings, we are all citizens of one place, and the manual is filled with principles that apply to us all because it is not a religious book. It's a book of law. Laws are formed and established inside countries, and there is a country called the Kingdom of Heaven. When we die, we will be vetted and pass through the Kingdom of Heaven's immigration and customs line. Based on our passport, we will then be directed to one of two places to remain for the rest of our vacation, which is eternity. Though we can't judge passports, a citizen's behavior, language, and laws will show which jurisdiction they belong to. From the Kingdom of Heaven's point of view, for a man and a woman to live together, they must be married. If you don't marry and you live together, you are violating that principle. Disregarding this instruction may be acceptable and even celebrated in your country, state, or region. But we will all have to pass through immigration and customs when our temporary time visiting on this earth is complete. However, applying principles from the manual inside a relationship, whether you are married or not, and whatever type of citizen you are, will yield similar successful results. The marriage contract. To build a house, you have to sign for it. To enroll in school, you need to sign for it. If you're buying a car, you sign for ownership and get a receipt as proof. Marriage is a covenant signed in blood. A house, a car, and an education have far less weight and expectations to them. If we sign for these things, then why, when it comes to a woman that a man claims to love, will he refuse to sign? Imagine a car dealership sold you a car, but refused to give you any receipts for it. How would you feel about that? Wouldn't it be suspicious and alarming if this dealership did not offer any paperwork? A woman who is living with a man as if she is already his wife and is giving herself wholly to him is offering everything, including her body and her heart. Why would he not want to sign for it? Being skittish about marriage, but functioning as a couple inside of one, brings questions about how much you, as the male, value that person. Do you want to spend the rest of your life with her? If you want to, then why not sign for it? And if you are afraid to sign for it, then should you be operating with it as if you have already gotten the receipt? Note, to the females, this is only if you are interested in getting married. If it is okay with you to live under these conditions, then that is your prerogative. But if you are someone who wants marriage, then it is best to save yourself until after you sign on the dotted line. Or you might find yourself hoping for years and never being able to get married. The Man with Many Houses. When dating my wife, I used to hate going home. But as soon as it got too late, I had to leave. Part of the reason was because, in my parents' house, if you didn't get back by a certain time, you'd have to sleep outside. But mostly, I did not sleep at her place because I found that dishonorable. For me, it is disrespectful to a woman to want to sleep with her and not want to marry her. I find that whenever a woman gives the male everything, she shortchanges herself in many ways, because the man has no need to marry her. Example 7. I remember meeting a man who had over half a dozen kids with a lady whom he refused to marry. The man owned 8 houses, and, when asked about them, he looked at me and told me with a bitter expression, "She thinks she will get any of my houses?" In the back of my mind, I thought, Lord have mercy, you gave this woman so many children. This woman gave herself to you and gave her life to you, and she's not even worth one of your houses? Somehow, because of the curse, the woman accepts this behavior, but I find it as an insult. If a woman is that valuable to you, then you must be willing to marry before you sleep and live with her. This, to me, is a true test of commitment. Chapter 14. The Key of the Marriage Table. Legs of the marriage table. Communication/accountability. There are 4 legs that keep the marriage table standing: communication, division of labor, intimacy, and finances. If any of these legs are missing, the table will not be level. The first leg of the marriage table is communication. It is important to note that communication has many sides that expand beyond simply learning Womanese. One such issue is husbands and wives hiding things from each other. For example, the husband may buy a car without discussing it with his wife first, or he may be out late playing ball but does not bother to inform his wife where he is and why he won't be home on time. This type of everyday communication is something another woman in his life required of him, his mom. If the male was rebellious and didn't want to communicate these things with her, he may not want to tell his wife either. Another example of communication is being accountable. If there is someone that is coming onto the husband, or if he's struggling with an attraction when he's around a particular person, it is good to be transparent with his wife before it turns into something that is irreversible. Some men may fear the woman's reaction if they are fully transparent in this particular area, and a woman may react negatively to test the full breadth of his heart. But working through these fears and concerns together and being fully transparent can build a foundation of trust. Communication is a very important leg of the table, and without it, the relationship will go sideways. Legs of the marriage table. Division of labor in the home. While in the past it was considered a woman's job to cook, clean, and take care of the kids, some women have taken on the curse of the man and now work as hard or harder than their husbands. Functioning as a primary breadwinner and carrying all the traditional roles in the home can cause the female burnout and misery. To bring balance to the family, there must be an agreement where the housework and childcare are not completely on the wife's shoulders, since she has now taken on a big part of the husband's responsibility. The division of labor in the home needs to be practical and properly rationed, so that both the male and the female reach a fair and peaceful understanding. Legs of the marriage table. Intimacy. The third leg is physical intimacy. Remember, a woman needs affection. This must be fulfilled for her to be content. In this same regard, a man needs sex. Lack of intimacy can cause friction in a marriage, especially if a female holds back from the male in order to punish him or express her displeasure. The manual encourages females not to defraud their husbands, 1 Corinthians 7:5. Withholding intimacy can widen the gap between spouses and may spur a spiteful husband to meet his needs elsewhere. Seeking intimacy outside of the marriage bed is wrong. However, it is not good for a female to withhold intimacy from her husband, or vice versa. Note that if a man is doing what he should be doing, lack of intimacy would never be a problem. So, if a couple is experiencing this symptom, it may be a sign of a bigger issue. When it comes to the act of intimacy, it is important to be considerate of your husband or wife. Certain acts might be painful for your partner, and their concerns should not be brushed off. Both individuals need to be sensitive and not just animalistic in the way they operate, so that intimacy will be something that's enjoyable and anticipated. If there are certain positions that a wife or a husband does not like, be respectful of this, because that also communicates your love. Legs of the marriage table. Finances. The final leg of the marriage table is finances, and, though it is mentioned last, it is just as important as the other three, as many marriages hit against this principle and crash to pieces. Not having the means to meet the household needs, such as food, rent, or school fees, puts a strain on a marriage. Regardless of whether the money has been splurged on gambling, drug abuse, or that new car, the lack of finances and the inability to afford rudimentary essentials will cause a problem. It is dangerous to spend without looking at costs, needs, and income. In this case, it becomes important to do budgeting, to plan ahead, and to look at how you want to save for the future. When it comes to finances, every couple is different. Some people can handle having one bank account. Some prefer separate bank accounts. Some don't like their salaries to mingle, and others do. The topic of finances must be clearly outlined, but, more than budgets and plans, the couple must be able to communicate. The more transparent and clear a couple is in this regard, the easier working together will be. Getting married for fun. It's easy to think only about the fun parts of marriage. Some males, especially those from a religious background, anticipate finally sleeping with their wives. Others are celebrating the chance to leave their mother's house or be their own man. In the mind's eye, they see an unrealistic happily ever after, a picture-perfect ending that will just come together miraculously. This skewed mentality is blinding, and it means that there is no planning and no consideration of the work, the expense, and the need for compromise that a marriage requires. In every marriage, there will be things that you'll have to do that you don't want to. There will be sacrifice, effort, and hard work, all things that you're not thinking about when you're having fun and throwing the big party. But after the guests leave and marriage truly begins, then the rubber hits the road. Chapter 15. The Key of Application. The best way to win an argument. To the men. Most husbands will tell you, when it comes to arguments, you can't win. Others will tell you that it is better to just shut up if you hope to get out alive. But the truth is much deeper than that. A woman who starts an argument with you is communicating that, at this point, something is wrong. Your best response would be to drill down. Dig beneath her words and find out what is really going on inside her heart. This investigation is done inside your own mind and not expressed verbally. Example 8. Let's say you're arguing because the lady is jealous. Previously, she accused you of looking at other women on the street. Today, you get a phone call and she demands to know who is on the phone. You wonder why your wife is making such a big deal. After all, many people call your phone. Why does she want to know who this particular caller is? In this scenario, there are different ways you could respond to her. Here are 3 examples. The first is to give her the number. The second is to scold her for asking. The third is to get defensive. All 3 responses have something in common. They are reacting to what the wife says by her mouth. As discussed in previous chapters, responding to what a woman says by her mouth is, unintentionally, telling her that you don't care about how she truly feels. If she's asking you to show her who is calling on the phone, that is telling you that she has lost trust in you. It is telling you that, in her heart, she feels something is wrong and her relationship is being threatened. The way to win an argument is not to see it as an argument, but to see it as a need that her heart has exposed. This will completely change your response to her, but such a mentality shift can only happen if 1. You care, and 2. You find out what needs to be addressed. You can't fix a problem you can't see or don't believe exists. In a scenario like the example above, I would address the issue by sitting down, quieting myself, and looking deeper into the root of my wife's behavior that might feel sudden, but more than likely is not. I would then ask myself, what are the things that cause jealousy? Next, I would find a way to solve it. Maybe I would have to consider being at home more often. Maybe I would consider giving her the password to my phone. I don't have to, but if I have nothing to hide, then I would offer that. Maybe I might consider being more aggressive in expressing my love and care for her, reinforcing what she means to me. Maybe I need to take her out for lunch more often. Maybe I need to stop being overly friendly, bordering on flirty, with the women around me. The focus here changes completely and moves away from responding to what has been said from the mouth. Rather than fueling an argument, I am now rushing to the heart where the actual damage is happening. There I cover the wound and protect it. This is how I would win the argument. However, we cannot take a woman's intuition lightly. A mother could be thousands of miles away from her child, but sense that something has happened. Likewise, a wife can sense when her husband's attention has been split or shared. Sadly, when a woman feels jealous, her claims are rarely unfounded. If you as a male see yourself in this example and you are playing around, it is time to decide whether you will correct it or not. You cannot have your wife and someone else on the side and expect your marriage to be happy and fulfilling. Practices that I employ. Each person is different, and the ways we show love may vary from couple to couple. If you're interested to know more, I recommend The 5 Love Languages by Gary Chapman, as there are some methods that work across the board. However, there are a few things I do for my wife specifically. I give her my bank card to take care of the house. I lotion and massage her feet every day. I carry her bag to the car every morning. I drive her around when she goes grocery shopping. One of the most meaningful things you can do for a wife is listen to her. In my experience, I have noticed that, after I've given my wife the attention she needs, I am free to do anything I want without complaints. When it comes to arguments, especially if it's about the kids, my wife and I give each other the right to say, "Come on, let's go in the room and discuss it." If one of us is really upset and doesn't want to talk about it, we leave the person and let them breathe, with the understanding that we will come together and talk about this behind closed doors. Patience and acts of service are also a part of my role as a husband and father. Being the leader does not mean that everybody should serve me all the time. On the contrary, it actually requires that I serve others. Through my actions, I show my wife that I care. Along with these efforts, I offer verbal reassurances. Note that sweet words are all the way at the bottom of this list. They mean nothing by themselves, and are especially worthless if they follow on the heels of cheating, neglect, verbal or physical abuse. You cannot tell a woman you love her after showing her she is not important to you. At that point, 2 messages are being sent, and one of them is a lie. Real change comes from effort and action. Study her love languages and take note of what your wife enjoys. Putting in the time and sacrificing your own desires tells her how important she is, without uttering a word. The most important thing to remember for the married males. In the story of the prodigal son, the young man partied with his inheritance. This is similar to a male having the wedding when everything is exciting, easy, and fun. Eventually, the butterflies in the stomach stage passes. If he is not able to function in the way that's required, he drives the female to a place of bitterness. This is like the prodigal son ending up in the pigsty after squandering his inheritance. Luke 15:15. My advice to those whose marriage has gone to the pigs is to do what the prodigal son did. Come to your senses and realize that something is wrong. No woman will go to her friends, her parents, her pastor, or her counselor and complain about a man who comes home early every day, massages her feet, and gives her his bank card so she can spend all his money. No woman will curse out a man who only tells her good, loving, and sweet words, who is compassionate, tender, and good at communication, who does all the work in the house and even disciplines the kids so she doesn't have to worry about that. No woman will whine about a man who never cheats or looks at another woman, who empties the dirt box and cleans the bathroom on time, who is romantic and takes her out on dates. No woman will wail about a man who, even after a hard day of work, can't wait for her to come home from her work so they can hang out and he can now pamper her. No woman will complain that she is tired of her husband because he's doing everything right. So if a wife is complaining, something is wrong. And if you don't come to your senses, you will never see it. Remember, the prodigal son was at the pigsty, But where his father lived, there were servants who were eating better than he was. Just like the prodigal son, it is possible to return to the way things were supposed to be. First, come to your senses. Secondly, make a plan. Lastly, get up and move on your plan. But all this first starts with humility. Not being willing to get up and face the person you have hurt is pride or even fear. None of these are good for a marriage. The most important thing to remember for the married females. To the ladies who are in the pigsty, you might be in a funny place, but unless your life is threatened, and thus you might have to deal with that in a different way, don't be abused. You are too valuable for that. You are priceless. The manual says, "He who finds a wife finds a good thing." You would think that statement is incomplete, that whoever wrote it probably hit their head or fell asleep before finishing the rest. Where is the other half that says, "And she who finds a husband finds a good thing"? It doesn't exist. This is very unbalanced and leans heavily in the wife's favor because you are a good thing. If you are not good, it's the man you married who made you that way, and he needs to become a better man. For every rascal who sees you as dirt, there are 100 more out there who'd do almost anything to have somebody like you. Some women might be trapped in a violent situation and feel there is no way out. But if this is not the case with you, then there is no reason to stay. Remember, you are the good thing. You do not have to accept being second fiddle, waiting around until that person is ready to fully commit to you. If you are in a relationship and you are aware that the person is cheating, you can consider temporarily removing yourself from the situation to prepare the relationship for repair. And, if the person left and now wants to come back, inform him that he has been officially demoted to the dating stage and that he is now starting from scratch. Next, silently sift him out, using all the techniques in this book to ensure he deserves you. The most important thing to remember for the unmarried individual. To the young woman trying to get into a marriage, use this book as a tool to measure, to discern, and to evaluate the heart of the person that you're interested in. Imagine you need heart surgery, and you have a one-time opportunity to search for the heart that you will be using for the rest of your life. You would want to choose wisely. You wouldn't want to pick a heart that looks good on the outside, but is rotten on the inside. Because of the gravity of the choice, you would do serious investigation to make the best selection. Similarly, you have the opportunity to test in the dating stage, and I'm not talking sexually. Sex blinds you and destroys the legitimacy of the test. But rather, through silent and careful observation, make your choice. To the male looking to get married, use the book as an instruction module on how to be and how not to be. Practice from now to develop the muscles of provision, protection, maturity, and responsibility so you can carry the weight of a family. Let these principles become second nature. Let them become a culture. Yes, this information is hard on men, but they are also principles. Principles are keys, and keys make access easy. It bears repeating. If I could only say one thing in this book, I would say to the males, what makes a long-lasting, successful marriage is to live locked in a loop. The loop of courtship. Everything you did during the dating phase when you were trying to impress your potential girlfriend, don't stop. If I could say nothing else and just say one statement, that would be it. That you live all your life, all the relationship, the whole marriage, live it locked in that loop. Never come out of that loop. Silburn. We hope you have enjoyed this production of The Marriage Key, written by Silburn Arthurs, narrated by Roger Johns, audio production by AB Book Services. Text copyright by Silburn Arthurs 2024. Audio copyright by Silburn Arthurs 2024. This has been a Silburn Arthurs presentation. All rights reserved. 2024. The end.